Now, obviously, I'm not expecting 25 touches per game, and it's not like he's been the most efficient running back in his career either. But we're talking about a clear workhorse running back with no competition for touches on a team that's projected to have a top 10 offense in 2023. Yo, what's going on, everybody? Dave Loughran with Stochastic Fantasy Football, and we're talking mid-round running backs that can win your league. Now, not everybody listed in this video is going to meet those qualifications. Here's a spoiler. Most of them won't. There is one guy, maybe two, that we're going to talk about that you're getting outside of the fifth round that could absolutely dominate leagues, crush their ADP, and take you to the promised land. So if you're into that type of stuff, despite it still being pretty early in the year, let's dive into it. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. Let's talk about some mid-range running backs that might be able to win your league in 2023. First up, Dameon Pierce, 68 ADP, 21st running back off the board. Now listen, I like Dameon Pierce. Very solid rookie season. And as a fourth-round rookie, he broke tackles at a higher clip than Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, and Nick Chubb, and was top 10 in yards after contact per attempt. Very solid stuff there. He was also ranked first in PFF's elusiveness rating among all running backs with at least 100 carries. But a path to a true breakout season as a top 5 running back or top 10 running back seems unlikely for a couple of reasons. First, Devin Singletary's in the Texans' backfield now. Not that he's some major threat overall, I'm not saying that, but he's better than anybody else that Houston's had behind Pierce in 2022, and he's likely to still steal some touches. Pierce also wasn't very effective in the passing game either. He did catch 30 of his 36 targets, but he had 4 drops and was only targeted more than 3 times in 2 of 13 games. Also, pass catching liability was a huge reason for that in his rookie season. Now, some of that could change with the new coaching regime in Houston, but we're still looking at an offense that has the most suspect receiving core in all of football right now, led by Robert Woods, Nico Collins, Noah Brown, and a question mark in John Mechie, and a rookie quarterback in CJ Stroud. I don't see a path for Pierce here to crack the top tier RB1s in a season where he needs to have considerable uptick in receiving work. And in order to do so, he's going to need to be a whole lot better at pass blocking. Now, I've seen the rumors that he's doing better pass blocking early on in camp, but how much does that actually matter right now, especially given the offense that he's on? It doesn't mean we should be fading him. Absolutely not. I think an ADP of 68 right now is perfectly reasonable for Pierce, but this isn't a guy I'm reaching on, a guy that I want in all of my leagues. This is a guy that you draft in these middle rounds, feel good about it, but don't have massive expectations. If you're not drafting on Underdog Fantasy yet, what have you been doing with yourself? And you must not love fantasy football because we're drafting in June already. They've got massive contests over there, best ball contests, where you don't need to set your roster, no ads and drops. You're just drafting the team that you like the most, your best team, and letting it ride throughout the season. And you're getting 100% deposit bonus up to $100 when you sign up, which means you deposit $100, you've got $200 now. Or look at it this way. You have 4 more entries to Best Ball Mania 4, $25 to enter, $15 million prize pool, $3 million up top. Or you've got 20 more entries into the puppy, which is $5 to enter with a $1 million prize pool. Stack your money up early. Get it into these drafts. Stop waiting until August and September to get your teams in. On Underdog, we're already doing it. And the link is in the description. The link is in the pinned comment. And of course, if you're watching this on Twitter, I threw it under this tweet. Check it out. Links can be found easily. Get the first match deposit bonus, 100% up to $100. Start getting those best ball drafts in today. Next up, maybe the most polarizing one, second most polarizing one in today's video, Cam Akers, ADP 71, RB 22 right now in Underdog drafts. Now, Cam Akers had one of the most bizarre years in recent memory in 2022. He was benched in week 1 after totaling 0 yards on the ground on 3 carries. Then he played second fiddle to Darrell Henderson before actually being inactive for multiple weeks and looking like he might actually get cut. Then with 6 games remaining in the season, Akers started seeing a big workload again and even closes out the year with 3 straight 100-yard performances and a 3-touchdown performance against the Broncos. I know Sean McVay recently said Akers is going to be a central figure in the Rams offense this year, which makes sense given the other backs on the roster. They did just bring back Sonny Michel, but I'm not sure how much that means right now. But this offensive line has question marks. Sure, they showed some promise later in the year. They dealt with a lot of injuries, had a ton of different starting offensive lines. But the end of the season was against the Broncos team that had completely given up under Nathaniel Hackett, a bottom-ranked Chargers run defense, and a pedestrian Seahawks defensive front. It's only fair, though, to mention how many injuries this team and the line and everybody dealt with throughout the year. So that's not lost on me. But we're talking about an LA offense that has way more liabilities than assets outside of Cooper Kupp, or at least way more unknowns than knowns right now. It is possible that a healthy Matthew Stafford, Kupp, and offensive line could change things in 2023, but still, Akers has fallen in and out of favor with McVay, and who knows, maybe Michel actually does get worked into this offense again. But ultimately, Akers has seen extremely limited pass catching work in LA. Even over the final 6 weeks of 2022 with no Cooper Kupp, where he was the lead back averaging over 70% of snaps per game, Akers ran around on 56% of quarterback dropbacks, but was targeted on only 11 of those routes run. And the only teams that targeted their running backs less last season than the Rams were the Bears and the Eagles. So there's a real steep hill to climb for Cam Akers and many variables that we can't really quantify right now for him to get to a solid, strong RB1 finish and absolutely crush his ADP. So Cam Akers, one of those polarizing figures. You either love him or you hate him. I'm somewhere in the middle, but I'm certainly not enamored with him going into 2023 either. Next up, we have Miles Sanders with an ADP of 63, 19th running back off the board right now on Underdog. Hell, Sanders finally broke through with a top 10 finish at his position in 2022. And thank God, because I wasn't willing to give up on this guy despite a number of disappointing performances, or campaigns, I should say. But much of Sanders' success, and it's hard for me to say this, but it's true. Much of that success was the result of him running behind a purely dominant offensive line in Philadelphia and being part of an explosive offense that was just outright littered with top-tier talent at every position. It isn't to say he can't have a strong year in Carolina after they backed up the Brinks truck for this guy. After all, Donta Foreman had some strong games with the Panthers last year, and Sanders will be reunited with Frank Reich and Deuce Staley, which is very good for him. But it's still a Panthers offense with a rookie quarterback and a completely suspect group of pass catchers. So you're talking about how well does this offense function in year one under a new regime with the rookie quarterback and a whole lot of moving parts. Carolina's run blocking definitely isn't bad. There's no doubt about that. But Sanders also benefited greatly from an elite offense last season. He had 11 rushing touchdowns. They were constantly knocking on the door against every team they faced. And he doesn't create much on his own, like many other backs who are dominant after contact. He also had more yards before contact than any other running back in the league. And yes, you could say that some of that is attributed to the running back, but we know how much role an offensive line plays in creating yards before contact. And if you watch the single Eagles game last season, you know exactly how impactful they were at the line of scrimmage. With Carolina expected to see far fewer trips inside the red zone than the Eagles did last year, who saw third most in football, it's all going to boil down to how involved Sanders is in the passing game. If he isn't out there on third downs, I have zero doubt this is going to be a disappointing season. And he's had issues with drops throughout his career. But if Sanders can reestablish himself as a capable pass catcher like he did as a rookie in 2019, there could be a ton of upside here. Currently being drafted as the RB19 with an ADP of 63, yeah, he's probably worth the risk here and more so. But with fewer expected touchdowns and his receiving volume in question, I wouldn't be banking on him to win my leagues in 2023. This is one to me where you say, I'm drafting Sanders not as my RB1, but as my RB2 with RB1 upside in the event that he gets back to being proficient as a pass catcher and out there on third downs to make a huge difference. Another player I'm seeing a lot of hype for and kind of scratching my head is J.K. Dobbins. He has an ADP of 58, and I'll tell you why once we get to the last player in this video that it's surprising to me that, two other running backs are going well ahead of the last guy who we really like. At least I do. But J.K. Dobbins has an ADP of 58. He's the 18th running back off the board right now on Underdog. I have a few quick thoughts here. He's arguably the safest of these mid-round running backs, with probably the highest floor as well. He's on an offense with plenty of talent that should see more than enough red zone trips for him to see, flirt with double-digit touchdowns. They also brought in Todd Monken to run the offense, which should help open up the passing game, something that had become an issue in the past under Greg Roman. Dobbins is also running behind a great offensive line. He's averaging an astounding 5.9 yards per attempt across 226 career rushes as well. We know he can evade tackles. We know he can create yards after contact. He's elusive with the ball in his hands. All of that stuff is great. However, Dobbins has never been used as a pass catcher in the NFL with the Ravens. And maybe that changes a bit this year with a new offensive coordinator. But there's another thing. Gus Edwards isn't going anywhere either. That great stretch of 4 games that we saw from Dobbins last season after returning from getting his knee cleaned up late in the year completely overshadowed the fact that, or I guess people ignored the fact that he totaled 54 carries in those games to Gus Edwards' 34. And Edwards has always been an efficient runner in this Baltimore offense too. He's averaging 5.2 yards per attempt with over 500 career rushes in Baltimore. Not to mention, Dobbins didn't play more than 50% of snaps in a game all season. Listen, I love his floor and his talent. Dobbins is likely going to have a very efficient season with plenty of scoring opportunities on a good offense. But the league-winning, top 10 bell cow role seems far-fetched given all of the factors working against him in Baltimore this year. All right, here we go. Last one, and the one I've been waiting to talk about most. Alexander Mattison. Right now on Underdog, he has an ADP of 64 as the 20th running back off the board. I truly don't believe when I talk about him a month or two from now that this will be the case. But right now, I am kind of confused that Mattison is being drafted outside of the 5th round as the RB20 on Underdog. In the 6 games for his career, not a huge sample, but significant enough for the NFL where we don't get much of a sample to begin with. In 6 games without Dalvin Cook, Mattison has averaged 20.4 PPR points on 19.5 rushing attempts and 4.5 targets per game. Now, obviously, I'm not expecting 25 touches per game, and it's not like he's been the most efficient running back in his career either. But we're talking about a clear workhorse running back with no competition for touches on a team that's projected to have a top 10 offense in 2023. Dalvin Cook was 8th in the league in touches last year. He averaged 18 per game. So again, we're not looking at 25 for Mattison, especially on a team that over the past couple of seasons has become more pass happy. Just drafted another wide receiver. Of course, you have Justin Jefferson. They've got plenty of weapons. TJ Hawkinson as well. So that's not lost on me. But Cook saw 320 total looks when you factor in his 56 targets. Good for 3.3 targets per game on top of his carries. Now, I'm not saying that Mattison's going to finish as the RB1 this season. That's extraordinarily unlikely. It's not going to happen. But he could be a top 10 running back. In this offense, absolutely. Why couldn't he be a top 10 offense in this Vikings high-powered offense? Look at the other running backs that we've talked about. All of them have serious question marks or blemishes. Dameon Pierce, Miles Sanders, they're on teams with entirely suspect offenses, with passing games that might not ever get off the ground in 2023. We talked about the reasons we like Miles Sanders, but there's still a lot of questions here. Dobbins is awesome, but the situation in Baltimore lends to a 2 running back backfield and little passing upside for both of these guys. And we didn't talk about Kenneth Walker, but he's going a full round ahead of Mattison on a Seahawks team that just drafted Zach Charbonnet in the 2nd round. And Charbonnet's actually good. Walker had a really nice rookie campaign, but it's Mattison, not Walker, who has a bunch of creative players behind him on the Minnesota depth chart. Volume is everything in fantasy football, and right now there's literally nobody threatening to take touches away from Alexander Mattison. If he sees even 85% of the opportunities that Dalvin Cook saw in Minnesota last year, he could smash his ADP. And if his workload is essentially the same as Cook's was in 2023, the sky is the limit. Appreciate you guys watching as always. Keep coming back for more. We'll be pumping out fantasy football content on the regular from now leading all the way up to the start of the regular season and through it on top of that. We'll see you guys back here for the next one. Peace.